In a French village known for its aggressive hornets since World War II, John Miller ignored the warnings about the massive nest in his attic for years. When he finally called an expert to remove it, the specialist approached confidently. But as he examined the structure more closely, his face suddenly drained of color. What he discovered that day would rewrite history. The village of Saint-Miro sits quietly in the French countryside, its stone houses and narrow streets, looking much the same as they did decades ago. But beneath its peaceful exterior, this small community has harbored an extraordinary secret for over 80 years. A secret that began with hornets. Since World War II, Saint-Miro had been infamous for its unusual hornet problem. The stories were always the same, tales of massive nests and unusually aggressive swarms that seemed to target anyone who dared disturb their territory. Generation after generation, residents warned newcomers about these dangerous insects, their stories growing more dramatic with each telling. The warnings were particularly stern about checking attics and old barns, where the largest nests were said to be found. Some elderly villagers would cross themselves when speaking of neighbors who had been attacked after stumbling upon a nest, their faces growing serious as they described the horrific stings that had sent victims to the hospital. When John Miller purchased his historic home near the Belgian border in 2013, he heard all these stories. The previous owner had been particularly insistent about never entering certain parts of the attic, pointing toward a shadowy corner where a massive hornet's nest had supposedly existed for decades. John, being a practical man from the city, had simply nodded politely while mentally dismissing these warnings as rural superstition. For 9 years he lived peacefully in his 1920s home, renovating the ground floor and second story, but never venturing into that particular section of the attic. While he wasn't entirely convinced about the hornets, there was something about the way his elderly neighbor, Maurice, would shake his head and mutter warnings whenever John mentioned cleaning the attic that gave him pause. The truth might have remained hidden forever if not for a routine home inspection in the spring of 2022. As the inspector moved methodically through the house, his flashlight beam swept across that notorious corner of the attic, illuminating what appeared to be an enormous grayish-brown mass tucked into the rafters. "Mr. Miller," the inspector called down, "there appears to be a very large hornet's nest up here. You should have this removed professionally." Looking up at the massive structure, John felt a mix of embarrassment and determination. He had let local folklore keep him from properly maintaining his home for almost a decade. It was time to deal with this problem once and for all. After some research, John contacted François Larue, an experienced pest control specialist known for handling difficult cases. When Larue arrived the following week, he carried himself with the confident air of someone who had seen it all. He listened impatiently as John explained the local hornet legends and the warnings he'd received. "Don't worry," Larue assured him, adjusting his protective gear. "I've removed hundreds of nests. This won't take long." But as the specialist climbed into the attic and approached the structure, something seemed off. His movements became increasingly hesitant. He leaned in closer, examining the surface with unusual intensity. Then, to John's surprise, Larue slowly removed his protective mask, his face having lost all color. "Mr. Miller," he called down, his voice trembling slightly. "This is not a hornet's nest. You need to call the Historical Society immediately." What Larue had discovered was something far more extraordinary than any insect dwelling. The structure, while convincingly disguised to look like a hornet's nest from a distance, was actually an ingeniously crafted cage. The specialist's trained eye had noticed subtle inconsistencies in the texture and construction that no real hornets would create. With painstaking care, Larue began to unwrap layers of yellowed wax paper, each one perfectly preserved by the attic's dry conditions. Inside, they found stacks of medical supplies dating back to World War II. Bottles of penicillin still sealed in their original military packaging, rolls of clean bandages, and carefully preserved surgical instruments. But the most remarkable discovery lay at the heart of this false nest. Wrapped in oilcloth and tucked safely away was a small leather-bound journal. Its pages, filled with neat, precise handwriting, told an extraordinary story. One that would finally explain why the village of Samiro had maintained its fearsome reputation for aggressive hornets for so many decades. The journal belonged to Dr. Pierre Dubois, who had served as the village physician during the German occupation. Through its pages, a tale of incredible ingenuity and courage emerged. Dr. Dubois had devised a brilliant plan to help the resistance movement and Allied soldiers trapped behind enemy lines. Using people's natural fear of hornets as his shield, the doctor had created multiple false nests throughout the village, each one carefully crafted to look authentic and each containing vital medical supplies. He understood that even the most thorough German patrols would instinctively avoid investigating what appeared to be dangerous hornets' nests. To make his deception even more effective, Dr. Dubois had deliberately cultivated the village's reputation for having particularly aggressive hornets. He would occasionally treat German officers for supposed hornet stings, carefully documenting these cases to reinforce the danger. The soldiers soon learned to give any nests they spotted a wide berth, never suspecting they were actually avoiding carefully disguised aid stations. The journal detailed how resistance members could identify the supply catches, subtle marks carved into nearby woodwork that would look like natural wear to the untrained eye, but served as vital markers for those who knew what to look for. Dr. Dubois had created an entire underground medical network, hidden in plain sight under the very noses of the occupation forces. Page after page revealed how the doctor maintained his position as the village's official physician, while secretly treating wounded Allied airmen and resistance fighters. He recorded the locations of all his supply caches, the methods he used to replenish them, and the countless lives saved through this ingenious system. The final entry in the journal, written just days after the liberation, carried a simple message that sent chills down the spines of those who read it. The Hornets have protected us well. They never need to do so again. The discovery in John's attic was just the beginning. Over the next few months, 3 more similar caches were found in other buildings around Samiro, each one perfectly preserved and still containing wartime medical supplies. The local historical society carefully documented everything, creating detailed records of Dr. Dubois' extraordinary resistance network. Today, one of the reconstructed nests holds a place of honor in the village museum, serving as a testament to human ingenuity and courage in the face of occupation. The medical supplies, documents, and Dr. Dubois' journal provide invaluable insights into resistance operations during World War II. Perhaps most remarkable of all is how thoroughly Dr. Dubois' deception became woven into the fabric of village life. For over 80 years, the reputation of Samiro's aggressive hornets persisted, passed down from generation to generation. Parents warned their children, neighbors cautioned newcomers, and the entire community unknowingly preserved the memory of one doctor's brilliant strategy for saving lives. John Miller's historic home had been more than just a residence. It had been a vital link in a chain of resistance that helped countless people survive one of history's darkest periods. The hornet's nest that wasn't a nest had protected its secrets well, waiting patiently in that attic corner until the right time came to reveal its remarkable story. What other wartime secrets might still be hiding in plain sight, protected by local legends and folklore passed down through generations?